But we haven't done this alone. We have not created this mission alone. And actually, the three young women that you're going to hear from today were very early on my inspiration and true innovators in this space. So we're going to set the stage with Juliet Gildehaus, a senior at Philips Academy in Andover, Mass. Sophie Eng and Haydn Wolfers, who are both juniors at Piedmont Highschool in Piedmont, California. They each bring their unique experience and lens on what they see in themselves, their peers, and their school communities. So I'm going to ask each of them to comment briefly for them. What is it like to be in high school in terms of your digital lives and 24/7 connectivity? And Juliet, we can start with you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Susan, and I'm so excited to be here, and this is so incredible. Susan and I first started talking last summer, and it's just amazing to see what she's built this into. So thank you. In terms of what it's like being a high school senior, high school student, and living with 24/7 connectivity in this digital world, I think there's so many different aspects I could talk about, but I think most importantly, it's really important to recognize that my generation and high school students and middle school students too, and college students are in a unique situation with social media and technology in general, because as we've grown and developed, we've had this alongside us, and social media has grown and developed with us, and that's been great in a lot of ways, because as the primary audience targeted by tech companies and these social media platforms, we've had great agency in being able to shape these platforms and social medias into something great and something positive in so many ways. But that's not to ignore the fact that we've been forced to navigate uncharted territory, and there's no other generation that could provide us with insight and advice and guidelines to how to navigate our digital lives, because they haven't it didn't exist. And I think that's been really hard, and it shows in the struggles that teenagers in particular deal with nowadays. Everyone, but teenagers in particular, whether it be struggling with the pressures of comparison culture, video game addiction, binge watching, information overload, productivity issues. It affects everyone in different ways.
Great. Thank you, Juliet. Sophie, you want to chime in here?
Hi. So for me, I mean, I've always grown up with tech. My brother has grown up with tech. He's younger than me. But for me and my friends, it was like we're always on our phones. We're always Snapchatting each other, texting each other, Instagram, just because we love to stay updated with each other. But I mean, so Susan and I started talking 2 Novembers ago, probably, and then I started reflecting on my time on my phone and my time with my friends, and I realized that I'm not connecting with people face to face as I really should be. I'm not establishing these relationships that could really help me later in life, because I'm spending more time on my phone. I was looking at my notifications all the time. And so I think that's a pattern that we see in a lot of high school students nowadays, is that they're more concerned with what's going on online than what's going on right in front of them. And that was really important for me to try and fix that issue. And then I'm also scared of how it's going to reflect on the younger generation, like my little brother, because he's really important to me. And he spends so much more time playing video games. On his phone, he just got, and he's in 6th grade. And I got like a flip phone in 6th grade, and he just got an iPhone 11. And I started getting really concerned about how younger generations are going to manage their screen addiction, and how parents are also doing their part and helping their kids.
Great. Thanks, Sophie. And Haydn.
So when Susan came and talked to us in our class like 2 Novembers ago, like Sophie said, I was just so surprised by all of the facts she shared, and I realized how big of a problem this is for me and our whole generation. and how it's not getting the attention it needs to figure out what to do. So, so I just thought it was so interesting, and I really wanted to figure out how to improve the problem for myself and for everyone else that, like they've said, is experiencing the same situation. And I think the most impactful, the way that it impacts me the most is just because I always have access to technology, so it's really difficult to balance when to use it and when not to.
Great. Thanks, guys. So Sophie, can you focus in a little bit more on how is there an impact on mental health that you're seeing? Is there this correlation that we've been investigating between digital overload, social media, and your generation's mental health?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a correlation between mental health and use of screens. And I think a big one is how social media reflects on our lives. So for me, social media, it holds a lot of ideals that are really unattainable for people and that they shouldn't be trying to attain. Like maybe it's how an Instagram feed looks and where people are traveling, or maybe it's body shape. Um, and so to me, those create a lot of mental health problems and a lot of just bad ways it's it, it causes people to think about themselves badly when they really shouldn't be doing that, because they're trying to measure up to these standards that really shouldn't be there for themselves. And I also think that screen addiction, it causes a bit of stress when we're always trying to be updated on our phones. But we shouldn't be trying to always 24/7 be checking um, apps and stuff. And that causes stress because of how connected we are.
Juliet or Hayden, did you want to add anything to that? Any perspective on that?
Yeah, I can. I definitely think, even more important than the data and the research that I've been exposed to through my work with Susan and LookUp about the correlations between, these mental health struggles among teenagers, such as anxiety, depression. Even more impactful than that has been my own experience in looking at my school community and my peers, and like Sophie was talking about, younger students in particular, and seeing how it's affecting them. And I think it's not even a question anymore that social media in particular, and technology in general, really is affecting our mental health in a negative way. And so that's, for me, what really drove me to want to pursue this passion of mine, which is tech life balance, because what's more important than our mental health and our well-being, right?
Terrific. Great. And so all three of you are so passionate at being role models and change agents. So I just love a little perspective. We can start with you, Hayden, on why. Why have you made this your passion? Why have you taken the lead in this?
Sorry, I was muted for a second. Like I said earlier, I realized when you came and talked to us how this is such a big problem, and I think it needs so much more attention. And also, I'm working on a project that's mostly focused on fifth graders in upper elementary and middle school, because I think that, like, our age in high school, people are aware in general, or especially because Susan came and talked to us, people are aware of how big of a problem this is and how it negatively affects their lives. But it's, once you've developed these habits, it's more difficult to change. So I think it could be really helpful to try and teach younger children how to develop better habits before they really start to, like, get phones or use them much.
Terrific. So Julie, we jump in here if we have questions from the audience for these three.
Yes, that's right. So if anybody has a question, feel free to unmute yourselves. It's nice to put it on gallery view so you can see each other chatting. But feel free to unmute yourself, or you can post a question in chat if you like.
Yeah, I have a question, Julie, if that's okay. It's Nelson here.
Hey, Nelson is one of our board members, everyone, and he's in the UK. Go ahead, Nelson.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, just for all three, so please feel free to chip in. But the question is, what actually are they teaching at school in the US, at high school or at college, in terms of skills when it comes to emotional intelligence, face-to-face interaction, the kind of stuff that we don't really think of when it comes to the tech world, and like human skills. What kind of classes are attributed to that at the moment? You guys have experienced, and is there enough? Do you think, or is it too heavy reliant on technology, or pure academia?
Well, at my school, we have a class called social psychology where we learn about mental health, and we talked a little bit about phones. But I think there definitely should be more because it's still a really big problem.
Thanks, Hayden.
Others?
We have a question regarding what it's like right now during COVID-19. Is it any different? How do you think this is going to impact teens today with regards to the tech life balance?
I think in terms of tech life balance in COVID, in this situation right now, it's pretty tough. I think, even myself, who, I take pride in having established a pretty healthy relationship with technology over the years. Of, it wasn't easy, but I find myself falling back into old habits, and I definitely think it's gonna be hard because technology right now is really our only way to stay connected with so many people that we love and care about. So we really want to use it, but I think the scary part is that all technology to some extent is designed to addict us. It's designed to keep the user on as long as possible, and that's really scary because you can try to limit yourself, but when you're trying to connect with people and you find yourself on FaceTime, and then even apps like House Party, which is a video chat, have these little methods that they use to keep you on longer, and that's tough and that's scary. So I think it's definitely not great, but we're just trying to navigate it.
Great, and let's do one more. Sylvia, I see you have a question. Do you want to ask it, or I can read about it? You did have the similar question about the now, as we're all glued to the screen all day long.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. I'm a former colleague of Julie, so that's how I.
And a leadership expert.
So my daughter has two little kids, and she has, until the beginning of COVID, been able to keep them away from screen time. And now she's thrown her hand up and has kind of given up. And her kids are 8 and 4. And so she realized that sometime soon, screen time would become part of their routines. But now, especially the 4-year-old, it's like the next generation after Gen Z is now getting kind of a false start because of this situation.
Good observation. Thank you, Sylvia. We have one from Alex Jakowski, and I think then we need to move on to the next. Alex, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Do you have a
Sure.
question?
I was just curious, just given the last answers about what other companies are doing to keep you on your phone, to keep you engaged. I'm just curious, kind of what do you think the role of corporations are, in trying to get you off your phone while also driving value for their company and their valuation and shareholders and yada yada yada. What do you think their responsibility, should be?
Oh, sorry,
You can go. No, you can go.
No, I went last. Sorry, you go.
Okay. Well, for me, I think we can see a lot of corporations are focused on what they're bringing in, and I think it's not really their responsibility to get us off their phones, but it's children's and parents' own responsibility to learn what a good balance is for themselves and how it's affecting themselves.
I imagine we probably have both arguments on both sides of that coin. Alex, that's our next webinar, and you can lead that discussion for us, okay? Because that's a big one.
That is a
And I
big
know even through some of the design competitions, some of the students were considering advocacy campaigns, particularly at the University of Arizona at one point. Some of the students were considering advocacy campaigns as part of their pitch, but they pivoted from that idea. Anyway, we have to wrap up this session. It's being recorded, so I'm thrilled about that. Susan's going to introduce our next guests and presenters, and this is
yeah, and I just want to give a special shout out. This is a bi-coastal organization, and I have Sophie Eng Haydn here in Piedmont, California, the one coast, and Juliet on the east